In today's Attack on Titan video, I'm going to be explaining the true backstory of Zeke Yeager, as well as going over his actual plan to save Eldian in full detail. So this video will contain spoilers for the Attack on Titan manga, and if you're anime only, this video will only contain relevant information regarding Zeke Yeager's backstory and plan. So if you're going to stick around, make sure to keep that in mind. And it's been a while since I've set a like goal for one of my Attack on Titan videos, so let's see if we can hit 100 likes on today's video. Also, feel free to comment down below what you want me to make a video on next. With that being said, let's get right into the video. Zeke Yeager, since his initial introduction in the series, has been shown to be one of the greatest threats to humanity inside of the walls. As the Beast Titan, he's laid waste to thousands of Eldians in Paradise, and he was also responsible for the death of one of humanity's greatest leaders, Erwin Smith. So naturally, with the revelation of Zeke in season 4, being shown to have switched sides from Marley to work with the people of Paradise and his half-brother Eren Yeager, is led to a lot of suspicion. But before talking about Zeke's real intentions and how he truly plans to free the Eldian people, let's go over his backstory from the point of no context and context. Initially, in season 3 of Attack on Titan, when we were experiencing Grisha's memories through Eren, we saw a young Zeke reporting both of his parents to Marley, since they were at the head of the Eldian restorationists, and the crime of being a restorationist would result in your whole family being turned into Titans and then sent to Paradise. So Zeke told on his parents to Marley to prevent him and his grandparents from suffering this fate. And as a child, I guess one couldn't really blame Zeke for his actions, since as Grisha said, how terrible it is to force one's beliefs onto their children. So taking these factors into account, it would make sense as to why Zeke became the person he grew up to be. As a result of his father and mother, he would come to hate Eldian and become a Marleyan warrior. Furthermore, he wanted to save Eren from the same fate. However, after Zeke betrays Marley and we get to see his side of the story, we find out that it's way more deeper than what's shown at the surface level. In chapter 114 of Attack on Titan, we see a much younger Zeke with his parents Grisha and Dina, and we can see them being treated badly by Marleyans around them since they're Eldians, and said to be the descendants of devils. During this whole incident, we see Grisha asking Zeke if he wants to leave the Liberia internment zone, and if that's the case and he can't stand the world that they live in, that Zeke will have to go ahead and change it himself. We then see Zeke undergoing the training to become a Marleyan warrior to try and fulfill his parents' wish. So from a very young age, Zeke has been in this situation where he has always been conflicted / under pressure. And by pressure, I mean the pressure from his parents to work towards their dream of restoring Eldian to his former glory, and then the pressure of also working towards becoming a warrior candidate while keeping all of this information to himself. And keep in mind how difficult it must have been for Zeke as a child when his parents Grisha and Dina are Eldian restorationists, and on the other hand his other guardians, his grandparents, were completely loyal and devout to Marley. We know Zeke was left with his grandparents a lot, while his parents went out to a social dancing club, which was likely the story they told to cover up the meetings of the restorationists. So even at this tragic young age, he was having both sides forced onto him by those he held most dear. He did even have a say in the matter, and you can even see here he looks so unmotivated / depressed, which is understandable when taking his situation into account. However, it was not until Zeke met Tom Cassava, who is his Beast Titan predecessor and a Titan science researcher, that he truly found his own motivation and purpose in life that wasn't already decided for him. After being praised by his father for understanding his goal and being told that he doesn't have enough drive to be a Marleyan warrior, we see Zeke on his way home when he bumps into Mr. Cassava. After recognizing that Mr. Cassava was a warrior through his red armband, the two exchange names and introduce themselves, and we see both of them playing catch together. And this is like the first time we see Zeke genuinely smiling as a child. He's not being forced to accept the ways of his parents or even Marley. He's just enjoying himself playing catch without all these expectations and responsibilities being placed on him. We then see Zeke returning home to his parents, and they have a visit from Grice, who we know was a key figure in the Eldian Restorationist group and also a relative of Colt and Falco Grice. But they were all discussing how Zeke was essential to make their plan to retake the founder work, and that the Owl, also known as Eren Kruger, said that he needs Zeke to perform better and get higher marks in the warrior training before he can use his position to increase the chances of Zeke gaining one of the 9 Titans, which would put them one step closer to achieving their goal of freeing Eldian and getting revenge on Marley. We see Zeke eavesdropping on the conversation between his parents and Grice, and once they notice him, we see Grisha saying that we know you can do it, Zeke, because you are a child. And once again we see this insane amount of pressure and expectations being placed on Zeke. And while Zeke is trying to meet these expectations, we see him taking another shot at the Marley warrior training. And while Zeke falls behind the other candidates, we can see Grisha walking away frustrated at his son's performance, which Mr. Cassava took notice of. After the training's over, we see Zeke crying at home while his parents are arguing. His mother's saying that he tried his best, whereas Grisha literally can't come to terms with the reality at hand and stresses the fact that they immediately need to think of another way for Zeke to become a warrior. And through all this we can see just how different the upbringings of Zeke and Eren were, despite having the same father. Following the dispute in the house, we see Zeke and Mr. Cassava discussing his performance from the other day, and Mr. Cassava lets Zeke know that he would be better off not becoming a warrior, due to the limited life Titan shifters have, and the fact that he would be forced to kill people. And he also lets Zeke know his true intentions, and why he became a warrior. Mr. Cassava says the reason he became a warrior was because he wants to know the secret of the Titans, and for this information he was willing to become a warrior and shorten his lifespan. As a researcher, this was Mr. Cassava's goal, to learn all about the Titans, from their compositions, how they came about, and what happened 2,000 years ago. Just everything, which is definitely a respectable motive. Shortly after this we have Zeke back at home with his parents, and after overhearing a conversation between members of Mali Public Safety, he learns that they caught wind of the Eldian Restorationist group, and that someone known as the Owl, which we know at the time was Eren Kruger, was an inside man for them. Upon realizing that their plan was in jeopardy, Zeke tells his parents out of pure worry and concern that they shouldn't do anything dangerous anymore. He even uses the punishment of being sent to paradise to try and sway their minds. However, his parents being shocked at Zeke essentially telling them to give up their mission, get angry, and Grisha completely snaps, screaming at Zeke and completely disregarding his son's feelings. After realizing that his parents never really cared about him and prioritized their mission over their own son, we see Zeke talking to Mr. Cassava again, and upon learning everything, he tells Zeke to accuse them to save himself and his grandparents, which is exactly what Zeke did, as we see the events that happened in season 3 play out once more. And honestly, I definitely don't think Zeke was in the wrong for what he did whatsoever. A few years later we see Zeke playing catch with Mr. Cassava, who is nearing the end of his term as a Titan shifter. And while the two discuss the powers of the founding Titan, Zeke says that with the power of the founding Titan, could it prevent the subjects of Ymir, aka Eldians, from ever having children again. In other words, euthanization. The reason Zeke says this is because Zeke truly believes that being brought into this world as an Eldian was to suffer. From all the discrimination, hate and pain he's felt over the years, he feels that it would have been better to not have been born at all. Furthermore, upon hearing Zeke's words, Mr. Cassava tells him the story of how his son and his wife died. And to cut the story short, Mr. Cassava hid his identity as an Eldian by taking off his armband, and he married a Malian woman, which wasn't allowed. So the day his wife found out what he really was, she killed her own son before committing suicide herself. And after this tragedy, as you can imagine, Mr. Cassava became suicidal himself and became a warrior so he could die in a great way. However, during his term he found himself being fixed on studying the Titans, and he also met Zeke, who he saw in the image of his own son. Ultimately, Mr. Cassava agreed with Zeke's notion of how much better it would have been if he was never born into the world in the first place. And upon hearing this from Mr. Cassava, Zeke resolves himself and promises that he will inherit the Beast Titan from him, steal the founding Titan and save the world. And once again, this is probably the first time we've ever actually seen Zeke, since being a small child, have his own ambition and decide for himself what he wanted to do. He wasn't being forced to become Eldia's savior like he did with his parents and the Restorationists, but he generally wanted to make his and Mr. Cassava's dream and plan come true. And I guess you can say that Mr. Cassava, despite being Zeke's father figure, he was also his salvation. And in chapter 115 of the Attack on Titan manga, prior to his death, we see Mr. Cassava telling Zeke how to bypass the vow to renounce war and how to execute the euthanization plan using the founding Titan. Then, many years after Zeke inherits Mr. Cassava's Beast Titan, we see him learning of the existence of his brother Eren Yeager from Reiner, and how he is the one who now wields the founding Titan, which is the key for the euthanization plan to be executed. And with that being said, this is the true backstory of Zeke Yeager and his plan to free Eldia, the euthanization plan. So if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more Attack on Titan content. We are on the road to 5k subscribers, so I would really appreciate the support. Also, let me know in the comment section down below what you want me to explain next for Attack on Titan, or just any type of videos you want to see for the series. However, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.